More than 15 years ago, I was a guy who believed in cholesterol theory. I was a very strong cholesterol believer. And every time I found a patient with very high cholesterol levels, I persuaded him or her to take statins. I was wrong, but I believed in that theory.
The focus on cholesterol has also led to a global cholesterol-lowering industry that generates billions of dollars each year for pharmaceutical companies and food manufacturers.
You just can't get away from high cholesterol.
More than 40 million people now take medications known as statins to lower their cholesterol levels.
Statins have become one of the most widely prescribed categories of drugs in medical history.
These are the #1 profit makers for the pharmaceutical industry. These are the darlings of the pharmaceutical industry. This is their babies.
And strong evidence exists to suggest that the benefits of statins have been exaggerated by pharmaceutical companies keen to increase their profits.
We are beginning to see now that a lot of the facts that we are given are actually somewhat manipulated.
Doctors are not trained in nutrition. They know no more than you do.
It's a very hierarchical world, medicine. International opinion leaders say it, the national opinion leaders agree. No one's going to stand up and go, well, I don't believe that.
This stands as organized crime, but there's a lot more money in this. And in fact, many, many more people get hurt.
The marketing concentrates on the fact that you can lower your cholesterol as if that was the end in itself, which it is not. Cholesterol is just a lab number. You know, who cares about lowering cholesterol unless it actually translates into a benefit to patients?
Over the decades, drug companies have had an enormous vested interest in statin drugs.
The American Heart Association and similar associations received large sums of dollars, $28.3 million in the year 2017-2018 to American Heart Association from various different pharmaceutical companies, some of them giving them as much as $4 million. Now, the local physician like me in the Clear Lake community or the NASA community, you would think is independent. They really are not. And even if they are compromised. You will find that several local physicians are paid very handsomely by the pharmaceutical industry to promote their drugs. In one of their investigations, they found that over 700 doctors were paid more than $1 million by either drug or device company.
So do drug companies seek out doctors to be their mouthpieces?
Drug companies clearly seek out what's called key opinion leaders. These are people with a national reputation who can create the street knowledge for practicing physicians.
There is ample published literature showing that doctors who receive money from drug companies have more favourable attitudes and prescribing habits towards that drug. Dr. Galom makes a stunning accusation about why she believes some doctors in the US may push their patients to take statins.
I think they often intentionally hide those risks because there are often physician incentives that benefit the physician for having more patients on statins. So it pits physician self-interest against patient benefit. This particular woman contacted me, and she had left the practice that she was at because they insisted that at least, I believe it was 80% of her patients be on statins. This has actually been written up in media as something that is actually considered legal and acceptable. I can't see any way in which that's acceptable. I'm literally the only researcher I know who studies this class of drugs who has a policy not to take money from industry.
Professor Rita Redberg is a world-renowned cardiologist. She says barring a genetic condition, the only people who live longer by taking a statin are those that have already had a heart attack or stroke.
Valve's working great.
That's good.
Yeah.
And of them, only a very small number will benefit.
1 or 2 people in 100 will benefit from taking a statin. What people don't understand is that means the other 98 will get no benefit at all. It's not going to reduce their chance of dying.
But this hasn't limited their use. These drugs are now being widely prescribed to relatively healthy people, those without diagnosed heart disease. And Dr. Redberg warns most of them won't benefit.
For healthy people, even people that have a lot of risk factors, so they might have high blood pressure, they might smoke, they might have diabetes, the data is not there to suggest that those people are better off taking a statin. No, I don't think it's a wonder drug.
Statins are meant to be lifelong medications, but Dr. Curtis says we don't know about the long-term side effects.
The studies that have been done have generally been just a few years in duration. The long-term effects may not show up for many years. It may take many years for a cancer that develops to make itself manifest.
We frequently forget that cholesterol is essential for life, and that a little higher cholesterol is associated with longevity, decreased malignancies, improved defense against infections. So when you lower cholesterol by any means, you can have adverse effects just from that.
Now we come to an even more serious problem, that is that low cholesterol predisposed to cancer. We have identified at least 11 studies where low cholesterol measured 15, 20, 30, 40 years previously was a risk factor for cancer. One of the most striking findings is made in Japan. Japanese researchers, they gave a small dose of simvastatin to about 40,000 patients and followed them for 6, 7, 8 years. They looked at the cancer frequency in relation to their cholesterol. They measured the frequency of cancer in people with high cholesterol, medium cholesterol, and low cholesterol. That those with the lowest cholesterol, those who had achieved the lowest cholesterol value, they had 3 times more cancer cases in that group. There were 3 times more who had died from cancer in that group compared with those who still had normal cholesterol.
And we don't have good follow-up studies. In other words, let's say that somebody's been on statin for 5 years and they develop cancer. Who's to know that? Who's to say, well, we better start looking at, there's no follow-up of that nature.
이번에는 질병이 전혀 없는 건강한 정상인 평균 46세를 대상으로 콜레스테롤 낮은 사람과 높은 사람을 비교했습니다. 신체를 방어하는 면역세포의 총 합인 총 림프 구수는 콜레스테롤이 높은 사람에서 압도적으로 많았고 총 T세포 수 역시 훨씬 많았습니다. 조력세포 역시 훨씬 많았고 항체 생성에 크게 관여하는 총 B세포 수도 훨씬 많았습니다. 암세포나 바이러스 등을 제거해주는 활성 NK세포 수도 콜레스테롤이 높은 사람에서 월등히 많았습니다. 그리고 개수뿐만 아니라 콜레스테롤이 높은 사람에서는 면역세포의 활동성이 더 좋았고 포식작용 역시 더 강했습니다. 이렇게 건강한 정상인에서도 콜레스테롤 수치는 면역 기능에 큰 영향을 주고 있습니다. 다시 레이든 마을로 돌아갑시다. 이번에는 암 사망률입니다. 역시 총 콜레스테롤 194 미만에서 사망률이 가장 높죠. 195에서 249 사이에서는 사망률이 크게 감소했고 역시 250 이상에서 사망률이 최저였습니다. 이번에는 네덜란드 공무원 28년 연구입니다. 혈중 콜레스테롤 수치와 암 사망률을 조사했는데요. 콜레스테롤이 가장 낮은 그룹은 전체 암 사망률이 2.1배나 높았고 특히 위장관계 암 사망률은 무려 4.2배나 높았습니다.
Particularly skin cancer, but we've known about this association between statin drugs and cancer for a long time. In fact, from 1996, this is a famous study on statin drugs and cancer in rodents. Results of this study published in the journal JAMA, Journal of the American Medical Association, in 1996. All members of the most popular classes of lipid-lowering drugs, that's fat-lowering drugs, the fibrates, which were the old school statins before statins came out, and statins cause cancer in rodents. And authors of the study said that statins and fibrates should be avoided except in patients at high short-term risk of coronary heart disease. That's because of the risks of cancer.
캘리포니아 대학 연구에서 피브레이트와 스타틴계 고지혈증약은 실험동물 설치류에서 암을 유발했지만 한 고혈압제는 암을 유발하지 않았습니다. 연구원들은 왜 이 약을 FDA에서 승인했는지 의문을 표하면서 관상 동맥질환 발생 위험이 매우 높은 경우가 아니라면 피브레이트와 스타틴계 고지혈증약은 사용을 피해야 할 것이라고 강조했습니다. 이번에는 미국 35만 명 12년 연구입니다. 총 콜레스테롤 160 미만에서는 간암, 췌장암이 현저히 증가했고 자살과 알코올 의존 증후군이 증가했습니다. 그리고 총 콜레스테롤 감소할수록 폐암, 림프계암 및 혈액암도 증가하는 양상을 보였습니다. 여러분, 정말 총 콜레스테롤과 LDL 콜레스테롤을 크게 낮춰야 합니까? 여러분들은 어떻게 생각하십니까?
Tomohito Hamazaki is Professor Emeritus at the University of Toyama.
More than 15 years ago, I was a guy who believed in cholesterol theory. I was a very strong cholesterol believer. And every time I found a patient with very high cholesterol levels, I persuaded him or her to take statins. I was wrong, but I believed in that theory. Cholesterol is nothing. We Japanese have very high cholesterol levels and still enjoying low rates of coronary heart disease death.
One of the issues that prompted Professor Hamazaki to look again at the cholesterol theory was the link between lower cholesterol levels and increased mortality. In essence, where cholesterol levels are concerned, many studies have shown the higher, the better.
This is the meta-analysis of Japanese 5 reports showing the relationship between cholesterol levels and all-cause mortality. In men, it's just this trend, and in the women, there's nothing here. But if your cholesterol levels are very, very low, then your chance to die is bigger than the other groups. Liver cancer and cirrhosis mortality. So if your cholesterol levels are very low, your chance to die from these diseases here. And this is control. So it decreases like this. And look at this. There is no mortality from cirrhosis. Here again, it's liver cancer incidence. So it's just the higher the better. No victims here. And in women, it's something like this. Let's look at Korean data. This is very good. Over 1 million Korean adults were followed for 14 years. And the y-axis is showing liver cancer incidence. The same here, the same trend here.
If you have a substance that is carcinogenic, the first type of cancer to expect is skin cancer. It's easy to diagnose, it's easy to see at an early stage. Pancreatic cancer, you see it after 10 years, but you see a skin cancer, you observe it immediately. We also know that in the United States there have been an epidemic of skin cancer, non-melanoma skin cancer.
So is it true to say that the statin trials have simply not been long enough to assess whether?
No. I mean, if you smoke 20 cigarettes or more a day, you will not get lung cancer after 10 years, perhaps after 20. So these trials are too short. In one of the trials, the PROSPER trial, they included only old people. And we know that old people have very many cancer cells. We call them dormant. They don't harm those who bear them. But of course, if you stimulate these dormant cancer cells, they will start growing. And this is also what they found in this study, including only old people. All sorts of cancers were seen more often than in the untreated control group. How did they explain it? The research, they are paid by the drug industry, of course. So we analyze all the simvastatin trials to see if it's coming back again and again. But first, by doing that, they had already excluded skin cancer. Also, the mean age of the people in the other trials were 25 years lower than in the PROSPER trial. So you can't use that analysis to anything. It's a fact, and when you only treat old people, then you will see cancer more often.
With respect to cancer, the CARE study showed definite increase in the incidence of breast cancer. Since that time, all cancer patients have been excluded from statin trials. Why? And so they can pick and choose from past experience. So yes, there's all kinds of ways they can fudge the results.
So again, the deception from the statin industry and the statin experts is that let's go on a fence and say that statin use is associated with a reduced chance of having mortality if you have cancers. So they took a Danish population, 40 years and older, all of them had cancers, and they're comparing people who are not on statins to people who are on statins. Again, this is an unfair comparison. The reason is that if you have high cholesterol and you have cancers, you have a better chance of survival. And you would give cholesterol-reducing medicines only to somebody who has high cholesterol, not to somebody who has low cholesterol. So similarly, the comparison should be that somebody on low dose, middle dose, and high dose, if cholesterol is beneficial in preventing them from dying, the higher the statin dose, the lower should be your mortality. But not so. In this study, if you were on the highest dose of cholesterol, you had a much greater chance of all-cause mortality and also of cancer mortality compared to the low-dose cholesterol group.
이번에는 프라바스타틴 40ml를 투여한 프라스퍼 연구입니다. 약물 투여군에서 LDL은 33% 감소했는데 약물 투여군에서 암 발생이 25% 더 증가했고 암에 의한 사망 위험 역시 28% 더 증가했습니다. 이번에는 고지혈증약 바이토린을 투여한 시스 연구입니다. 약물 투여군에서 총 콜레스테롤은 약 50% 감소했는데 암에 의한 사망 위험은 67%나 증가했습니다. 이번에는 프라바스타틴 40ml를 투여한 케어 연구입니다. 5년 동안 연구했는데요. 약물 투여군에서 유방암 발생이 무려 13명, 대조군에서는 1명에 불과했습니다. 연구원들은 이렇게 말했습니다. 프라바스타틴 투여군에서 유방암 발생이 증가했다는 사실은 매우 놀라운 결과이며 예상하지 못했다. 이번에는 10년 이상 스타틴으로 치료받은 사람들에서 유방암 위험을 연구했습니다. 연구 결과 유방의 악성 종양인 침윤성 유관암은 83% 증가했고 침윤성 쇠엽암은 97%나 증가했습니다.
Professor Sultan is a world-leading vascular and endovascular surgeon. Professor Sultan has over 25 years of vascular experience.
What other things that happen with statin? And we find that statin was associated with significant increased risk of colorectal cancer, bladder cancer, and lung cancer. So you take a tablet of statin and 2, 3, 4 years down the line, the patient comes to you with an unexplained cancer. You look at the CT scan before that, it was normal. Then you look at it now, we have a problem. So we start investigating this in a much more detailed way. And what we find that it induces what's called necrotizing autoimmune myopathy with immunosuppression. And the outbreak of this huge number of squamous cell carcinoma in the skin that goes to our colleagues, the plastic surgeons that increase their productivity during surgery have increased. And the reason for that is that squamous cell carcinoma side effect of statin that have been excluded from all industry-funded trials.
Skin cancers, when you combine the 4S and the HPS trial, were higher in the simvastatin, the cholesterol group, compared to the placebo group.
Dated April 4th, 2018, from the Journal of the American Academy of Dermatology, a trend towards higher basal cell carcinoma, basal cell carcinoma risk with longer duration of statin use in men. Basal cell carcinoma is one of the forms of skin cancer, and it's now been associated with cholesterol-lowering drugs, statin drugs. Doesn't come as a surprise to me. Cholesterol is an incredibly important molecule in the body, and once you start monkeying around with basic fundamental chemistry, and cholesterol chemistry is basic fundamental chemistry in the body, you run the risk of all kinds of problems, cancer being one of them. Ironically, we take statin drugs and we take drugs to get better, and you end up with side effects and toxicity. In this case, statin drugs have been linked to cancer. For example, from the journal Prostate, April 2017, patients undergoing radiation and prostatectomy, that's when they take the prostate out, fare better with higher levels of LDL cholesterol. From the journal, International Journal of Cancer, April 2017, a recent study found that those with lung cancer and the highest cholesterol levels had a 67% less chance of dying.
Wow.
From the Journal of Public Library of Science, January 2013, women with the highest cholesterol levels had the lowest risk of breast cancer, 30% lower. The same study showed that there was a 39% lower risk of melanoma and a 39% lower risk of lymphoma, leukemia, when their cholesterol levels were the highest. From the Journal of Hepatogastroenterology, September 1998. Studies suggest that those with higher cholesterol levels are protected from colorectal cancer versus those with lower levels. What I'm saying here is cholesterol is a critical and important substance for health, for wellness, for building and repair, for stress management. You don't want to artificially lower your cholesterol.
저는 정말 궁금합니다. 언제까지 시대에 뒤떨어진 콜레스테롤과 LDL 이야기만 할 건지 너무 궁금합니다. LDL을 무리하게 낮추게 되면 암발생과 사망 위험이 동시에 높아질 수 있다는 사실을 우리는 반드시 인식하고 있어야 합니다. 의학은 LDL 수치를 치료하는 것에 있지 않습니다. 이제는 환자를 치료하는 것에 더 집중해야 합니다. LDL이라는 좁은 시야에서 벗어나서 다양한 혈액 지표들을 통합적으로 분석하면서 전체적인 관점에서 환자를 치료해야 합니다. LDL과 스타틴에 매몰된 현재 의료계는 이미 많은 것을 망각하면서 좁은 세계에 스스로 갇혀 있습니다. 이제는 과감히 빠져나와야 합니다. 환자에게 해가 되는 일을 하지 말라는 히포크라테스의 말을 항상 잊지 마시길 바랍니다. LDL 사편에서 다시 뵙겠습니다. 그러면 닥터3는 다음에도 더 나은 영상으로 찾아뵙겠습니다. 제 영상이 마음에 드셨다면 좋아요, 구독 꼭 눌러주십시오. 닥터3는 여러분의 건강을 응원합니다.